There's a financial rule that's been quietly destroying young families for the past 2 decades. Every financial expert teaches it, every apartment complex enforces it, and it might be the reason your family feels broke even when your salary should be more than enough. It's called the 30% rule. It says you can spend up to 30% of your gross income on rent. But here's what nobody tells you. That rule wasn't designed for families like yours. It was designed in the 1960s as a guideline for subsidized low-income housing. And in 2026, following it will make your family house poor before you even sign the lease. In this video, I'll show you exactly why the 30% rule fails young families today, the 3 structural reasons it's mathematically broken, and the actual calculation that tells you what you can really afford based on your real paycheck, not your gross salary. By the end of this video, you'll know the exact rent number your family can afford without sacrificing everything else. Let's start with why the rule everyone teaches is wrong. Let's start with where this rule actually came from. The 30% rule originates from the Brooke Amendment of 1969. It was a U.S. government policy designed to determine how much low-income families should pay for subsidized public housing. The goal was protection. The government didn't want vulnerable families paying more than 30% of their income for shelter. Somehow, over the next 5 decades, this protective guideline became the universal rule that every financial advisor, every apartment complex, and every mortgage lender uses. A rule designed for low-income subsidized housing in 1969 is now being applied to your $130,000 dual-income family in 2026. Think about that for a moment. Here's the first structural problem. The 30% rule is based on gross income, your pre-tax salary. But you don't pay your rent with your pre-tax salary. You pay it with what actually lands in your bank account after federal taxes, state taxes, FICA, health insurance, and 401k contributions. For a family earning $130,000 combined, gross income works out to about $10,800 per month. The 30% rule says you can afford $3,250 in rent, but your actual take-home pay, after all deductions, is closer to $7,400. Suddenly, that $3,250 rent isn't 30% of your income. It's 44% of your real money, and nobody tells you this when you're signing the lease. The second structural problem is even bigger. The 30% rule treats everyone with the same income identically, but 2 families earning $130,000 can have completely different financial realities. Family A has no kids, no car payment, no student loans. Their fixed costs outside of rent are maybe $1,500 per month. Family B has a baby in daycare, 2 car payments, and $30,000 in student loans. Their fixed costs outside of rent are $3,000 per month. The 30% rule says both families can afford the exact same $3,250 rent. Mathematically, that's nonsense. The rule has no idea what daycare costs. It doesn't know about your car payment. It doesn't account for the student loans you took out to earn the income that's now being measured. It treats young families with kids exactly like single adults with no obligations. That's the second structural failure. And then there's the third structural problem, the one almost nobody talks about. The 30% rule was created when housing costs grew at the same rate as wages. Since 1969, the median rent in America has increased by over 600%. Wages have grown by less than 200%. The mathematical foundation of the rule collapsed decades ago, but the rule itself never got updated, so we're all walking around using a tool that was calibrated for a completely different economy. And it's costing young families their savings, their stability, and their sanity. Here's why this matters more for young families than anyone else. There are 3 specific financial realities that make young families uniquely vulnerable to the 30% rule. And if you're a young parent, you're probably nodding already because you live this every month. Reality 1. Daycare is a massive fixed cost that doesn't exist for other demographics. Full-time daycare in most U.S. cities costs between $1,200 and $2,500 per child per month. For a single adult, This line item is zero. For a young family with one kid, it can be the second largest expense after rent itself. The 30% rule completely ignores this. Reality 2. Income reduction after maternity leave. When the second parent comes back from maternity leave, often at reduced hours, household income drops permanently. A family that earned $148,000 combined before the baby might earn $130,000 after. But the cost of living, including the new daycare bill, went up by $1,500 a month. The math gets worse exactly when the family needs it to work. Reality 3. Size constraints. A single adult can rent a studio for $1,200 in many cities. A family with one kid needs at least 2 bedrooms. A family with 2 kids needs 3. The cheaper housing options are simply not available to you, regardless of what the 30% rule says you should spend. You're forced into a more expensive bracket by family size, not by choice. These 3 realities compound. Daycare eats your buffer, reduced income shrinks your foundation, and size requirements push you into higher rent brackets. This is why young families feel broke even when their salaries look impressive on paper. The structural deck is stacked against you in a way that the 30% rule was never designed to handle. And here's the cruel irony. The advice you're getting, the rule everyone teaches, was originally designed to protect low-income families from being exploited by housing costs. In 2026, it's doing the exact opposite. It's pushing young, middle-income families into rent commitments that drain them. The protection became the trap, which brings us to what actually works. Here's the calculation that actually works. It's 3 steps. Each step gives you a real number based on your real situation, not a generic percentage. By the end of this segment, you'll have a personalized rent number that you can apply tonight. Step 1. Find your actual take-home pay, not your gross salary, not your pre-tax income, the amount that actually hits your bank account every month after taxes, retirement contributions, and health insurance. For most U.S. workers, this is between 65 and 72% of your gross income. If you're salaried, look at your last 3 pay stubs and average the net amount. And if you're paid bi-weekly, multiply by 2.17 to get the monthly equivalent, not just by 2. That's a mistake most people make. There are 26 pay periods in a year, not 24. Use the correct number, because every dollar matters in this calculation. Step 2, apply the 60% rule, not the 30% rule. The 60% rule states that no more than 60% of your take-home pay should go to all fixed costs combined. That includes rent, daycare, car payments, insurance, groceries, utilities, and any loan payments. This was originally part of the 50-30-20 rule, popularized by Senator Elizabeth Warren in her 2005 book. But since then, the cost of housing has outpaced wages by so much that most financial planners have updated the fixed cost portion to 60%. Some even say 65% for high cost of living cities. This adjustment isn't a luxury, it's a reality check. Step 3. Subtract every fixed cost that isn't rent from your 60% number. This includes your daycare payment, your car insurance, your minimum debt payments, your groceries, your utilities, your phone, your internet, and your gas. Everything that comes out of your bank account every single month, no matter what. What you have left is your real rent capacity, the amount you can actually spend on rent without breaking your family's monthly budget. This number is almost always significantly lower than what the 30% rule suggests. And that's not a problem with your finances. That's the rule finally being calibrated for your real life. Well, let me walk you through this with a real example, because numbers in the abstract don't help anyone. And let's look at a typical young American family. 2 parents, 1 young child in part-time daycare, average jobs, average debts. Meet a family I'll call Marcus and Sarah. They have a 4-year-old daughter named Lily. Combined gross income, $130,000 a year. Marcus works full-time. Sarah works part-time. Lily is in daycare 3 days a week. They live somewhere in the American Midwest. This family represents millions of young U.S. households. Here's what the 30% rule says they can afford. $130,000 gross income divided by 12 months equals $10,833 per month. 30% of that is $3,250. According to every apartment complex application form and every financial advisor, Marcus and Sarah can afford a rent of $3,250 per month. Now let's do the real math. Step 1. Their actual take-home pay is $7,400 per month after federal taxes, state taxes, FICA, and modest 401k contributions. That's already $3,400 less than the gross number the 30% rule uses. Step 2, 60% of $7,400 equals $4,440. This is the total amount Marcus and Sarah can spend on all fixed costs combined, including rent. Step 3, subtract their other fixed costs. Daycare for Lily, $1,200. One car payment, $350. Car insurance for both vehicles, $180. Groceries, $750. Utilities, phone and internet combined, $350. Gas, $180. That's a total of $3,010 in non-rent fixed costs. So their real rent capacity is $4,440 minus $3,010, which equals $1,430, roughly $1,400 per month. That's what Marcus and Sarah can actually afford. Not $3,250, not even close to it. The 30% rule said $3,250. The real math says $1,400. That's a $1,850 difference every single month. $22,200 per year, the difference between a stressed family and a relaxed one. Now here's the part where many of you are panicking, because $1,400 in rent might sound impossible in your city. In Los Angeles, in New York, in Seattle, even in Denver or Austin, $1,400 doesn't get you a 2-bedroom anymore. Sometimes it doesn't even get you a 1-bedroom. So what do you do when the math says your real rent capacity is lower than the local market? You have 3 real options. Option 1, reduce your other fixed costs to free up room for rent. Look at your car payments. Are you paying $500 a month for a car that's worth $15,000? Sell it and buy a $10,000 reliable used car. That's $300 a month back. Look at your subscriptions, your insurance premiums, your phone plan. Most families can find $200 to $400 a month in fixed cost reductions they didn't realize were possible. Option 2, increase your income. Not by switching jobs. That's not always realistic. By taking a structured approach to raises, side income, or skill development, a $5,000 annual raise translates to roughly $300 in additional monthly take-home, which means $180 more rent capacity per month. Small income changes compound over years. Option 3, geographic flexibility. This is the one nobody wants to hear, but it's the most powerful. If your city's rent floor is genuinely above your real capacity, the city is the problem, not the budget. There are dozens of U.S. metros where $1,400 still gets a young family a real home. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Kansas City, San Antonio, parts of Florida, and Texas. The same income goes twice as far in these places. This isn't about giving up your dreams. It's about giving up the lie that the 30% rule was protecting you. The rule was hurting you. The math was hurting you. Now you have actual numbers to work with. Here's what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. Take 20 minutes. Sit down with your last pay stub. Calculate your real take-home pay. Multiply it by 0.6. Subtract all your other fixed costs. Write down the number. That's your real rent capacity. Compare it to what you're currently paying. The gap is your stress. The framework I just showed you is one piece of a much larger financial foundation. If you want to build the complete structure, money mindset, budgeting that actually works, managing debt, earning more, and building long-term wealth, My full course on moon.com walks you through all of it. 15 structured videos across 5 modules. It's specifically built for young families who want to stop guessing and start using real math. The link is in the description. There's also a free introduction video if you want to see what's inside before committing. Either way, the rent calculation I shared today is yours to use right now, with or without the course. Drop a comment below with your real rent capacity number. And if this changed how you see the 30% rule, share it with one friend who's about to sign a lease. They'll thank you later. And if you're thinking about buying a house, be sure to watch this video next. It might just save you from making a big mistake.